All right, this afternoon I'm going to be working on making a tutorial on how to set up a standards-based core content class gradebook. Mr. Furman has been kind enough to sign me in. You should be able to follow along and see my mouse and every click that we're working on. But before we start making things, I'm going to show you a few settings that might be helpful. We're obviously an Infinite Campus, so you got to be logged in there. In the top right-hand corner, we're going to click the person, go to Account Settings. So first one, show active students only. As students are added and dropped from classes, your roster can get really cumbersome, and it'll show students in red that are no longer on your class roster. If you click this box, those students in red disappear and it's only active students. Can make your roster more realistic and more manageable. Show student number is totally optional. If you're doing your proficiency tracker with student numbers, this might be beneficial. Student picture can be helpful in learning student names. If there is no picture in IC, it doesn't help, but for some students it is helpful. Seating chart for attendance. We don't generally have assigned seating charts. It's generally not very fruitful. Canned comments come into play later when posting some grades. I would generally leave that alone for now. Whatever changes you make, click Save. We're going to go back to Gradebook. We're going to talk some more settings. So right here we can click this arrow to expand. And let's talk about these preferences. Display sparkline graph. Next to a student's name, you'll actually be able to see a trend of the scores on their assessments. I've never found this fruitful or helpful for me, so I always uncheck it. It's totally preference. You can do whatever you'd like. Same with pass, fail coloring for grades and scores. I find that helpful. What it does, if I put in a 3, it colors the cell green. If it's a 2.5, it's red, because that's not passing. So it gives a quick indicator on passing and failing with reds and greens. Muting simply turns them from bright red and green to a more muted or pastel color. So those are the settings I would set up. Jay, you're welcome to adjust these any way you'd like when we're done. But let's go ahead and jump in and start making a gradebook. So some things to check. First, we're in the year 2019-20, just to make sure you're on the right year. We're in quarter 1. Jay has given me permission to work with English 3, so we're working with his first period, and our task is final. That's where we're starting. We're going to first click on categories, and we're going to go to first period. If you have all the same preps, then if you only have one prep per se, you could click all, but for him, I'm just going to be doing it for one section. And we can adjust it later if we want to, but we're going to click that one section. If he wants to add this category to other sections, he can do that at a later date. Collaboration, you see it popping up because I played with it earlier. That is the name of one of the categories. Categories are your standards. So you have 6 standards, 6 categories. This is Mr. Furman's 6th category. He's calling it collaboration. 100% weight means all the grades for that one matter. We actually want to divide it equally across 6 standards. So we're looking at 16.66. Yes, we want to drop the one lowest. You might have to do some other dropping later, but given that students need to show proficiency twice and you're giving at least 3 at-bats, we're going to drop one of those. We're going to drop the lowest. We'll get the computer to do as much of the work for us as possible. Let's click Save for that. We have it. We'll just click Close. If we click Add, that's another one. All right, we've got a category. Let's go ahead and make an assignment. We'll figure out the grading in just a moment. The assignment that he's given to go into that category is Literature Circle 1. There, it's popping up for me. Super helpful. It was LC1 is the abbreviation. There's only a few characters can go into that. When it comes to the date assigned and the date due, I think that adjusting these to the actual assigned and actual due dates can be really beneficial for students in conversations later. It is a little laborious, but I think it's fruitful. So I would encourage you to set these. I don't have the dates of when this is occurring, so I'm going to leave them as is. The sequence, items in your gradebook will show up in the order that you enter them unless you alter this sequence, and you can customize the order in which things show or are lined up in your gradebook. If you wanted this to show up, as the 17th assignment and not the first assignment, you would need to edit this later. Category, you're picking which standard this goes under. We only have one standard, so we have to do collaboration. It is included in grade calculation. It is final. We are doing points, and everything is going to be scored out of 4. We know that. So we're going to go ahead and click Save and Close. We now have an assignment. I'm going to minimize some cells here. There's our assignment, Literature Circle 1, category collaboration. And we can even play with entering some scores. So let's say a student were to get a 2, or a 2.5, or a 3, or a 4. All right, we see how green scores are passing scores. We also see that red scores are not passing, but doesn't show up as an F. Our grading calculation shows up as an I. I'm going to delete these so that no students think that they have a score that may not be accurate. I'm going to click Save to any changes I make. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Grade Calc Options. Yeah, this is why it already calculated. From a previous attempt at this gradebook, I was able to click In Progress Grade, CHSC Grading Scale, and Weight Categories in both Final and Progress and Eligibility. To clarify, final happens at the end of the quarter. That's when we post. Finality, you have until Monday after the end of the quarter to post that. Progress and eligibility, we post every Wednesday by 9 a.m. This determines eligibility in things like sports, right? If a particular coach has expectations around the academic performance of a student, this is why we're posting that, right? So we want ours to look just like this. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. If you tried to follow along a moment ago and you put in those scores and letter grades didn't show up, it's because you hadn't done grade calc. If we do it now and you were following along, you should be able to see those same letters show up as me. Right? IIAC for these scores. And again, I'm going to delete them out so we don't have any errors for our students. So notice we have no red names here. This is a real roster. It's large, but it's realer. And we have an assignment in a category with the grades set up. That's the basics of setting up standard-based grading for a core content class. I'm going to do a separate video for homeroom.